We all know the transfer portal can turn a team from worst to first and can be the coach's best friend, but it can also be the coach's worst nightmare. Who are the big impact transfers coming into the Big Ten this season? Let's take a look. So we all know what a good transfer class can do. The world of college football changed as we know it when the transfer portal was introduced. It can be a coach's best friend, a worst nightmare. Because man, it can giveth and it can taketh away. We all know that. It's free agency in college sports. It is exciting for a fan because man, you can go out and you can grab experienced players to improve your team, to take your team to the next level. That's exactly what Mel Tucker did at Michigan State. Looks like that's what Scott Frost is doing at Nebraska. But I'm going to take a look and zero on a few players who I think are going to make a big-time impact this season here in the Big Ten Conference. First, I want to start with a Michigan State running back, the same team and position that made a big splash in the transfer portal that made them a 10-win team last year. Jaylenberger, the Wisconsin transfer, is coming into Michigan State. Now let's learn a little bit about Jaylenberger. Out of high school, this kid was a four-star kid, top 150 player in the nation, top player in the state of New Jersey. It looked like he was going to be the guy that was going to succeed Jonathan Taylor, right? That 2020 COVID-shortened year, him and Garrett Grochek were the leading rushers, about 300 or so yards apiece. And it looked like, okay, Jaylenberger is going to be the next guy at running back U at the University of Wisconsin. Didn't work out that way, though, did it? No, it didn't. Ches Malusi came in as a transfer from Clemson. There were some problems with Jaylenberger. Head coach Paul Chryst. Some people say attitude problems. Other people saying showing up late to practice, doing this, doing that. It's hearsay sometimes, but had problems nonetheless at Wisconsin with some of the coaching staff there. So he's back into the transfer portal, winds up at Michigan State. You watch this kid on film, and you watch him in that COVID-shortened year, and this is a good running back. There's no doubt about it. This kid can play. It's just ran into some problems, and that's one thing that exists in the back of your mind. Will these attitude problems rear their ugly head again? How's that all going to go? And I'm sure Mel Tucker has figured that out and vetted that. But if you can get past that, this is a kid that can run the ball. This is a kid that can tote the rock. And we saw what Michigan State's offense with Peyton Thorne at quarterback and how they want to play. They want to lean on the running back of the backfield that dots the I, and they want to pound the football and then try to hit big plays over the top in the passing game. I think this guy's going to be able to come in and be a big part of this offense. You look at what Kenneth Walker, right? He was decent at Wake Forest, but when he transferred into Michigan State, just went to a completely different level. And Michigan State has improved their team, and Michigan State's going to be right there. A big reason for that is going to be Jaylenberger. I think he's going to get a lot of touches, just like Kenneth Walker did. Remember that first game of the year for Michigan State against Northwestern where he jumped onto the scene and seemed to never fade away. I think Jaylenberger is going to hit us with a big game early in this season, and I think things are going to work out well for him at Michigan State. So my first big-time transfer out of a great transfer class, I'm looking at Jaylenberger, the transfer from Wisconsin to Michigan State to make a big impact as the replacement for Kenneth Walker. My next one, Mathis, the TCU transfer that transferred into Nebraska. At one time, he was considered the top defensive prospect in this year's transfer class. Probably behind Eli Ricks, he's the best defensive player overall when all is said and done in this year's transfer class. 2 times, he was second team All Big 12 at TCU. And here's the big thing about Mathis. It's who he's teamed up with. It's what's coming together at Nebraska. Late in the season, interior defensive lineman Ty Robinson got pushed to the outside of that defensive line, and it helped out. Right? Ty Robinson is a big part coming back to this Nebraska defense. And this isn't a guy where you plug Mathis on a defensive line and he's the main guy and the entire offensive line has to focus. How are we going to stop Mathis? No, you got Ty Robinson over there as well. That is going to be a two-headed monster coming off both sides of that Nebraska defensive line. And this is a Nebraska defense that was pretty solid with defensive coordinator Eric Chenander in place. And now you add in a couple of other players. This led by Mathis. And when you look at, Ty Robinson kind of came up late in the season, but earlier in the season they didn't have much of a pass rush. They were good in other parts of that defense, but getting that big-time pass rusher in there is really going to help Nebraska. And boy, I think he's going to come onto the scene mainly because the Huskers have somebody else on that other side of the defensive line that can occasionally take the pressure off of O'Shawn Mathis. You got to throw a quarterback in here, right? You have to. Connor Bazelak, transferring from Missouri to the University of Indiana. Now, you might say to yourself, well, he wasn't that great at Missouri, 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions last year, and 5,000 yards in 2 seasons. I mean, what's the big deal about Connor Bazelak? Well, and especially considering Ty Freifogel and Peyton Hendershot, 2 of the biggest pass catchers over the last couple of years, they're gone, NFL. So what's left at Indiana? Why do I think Connor Bazelak is going to come in and give this Indiana team a boost? Well, I'll tell you why. He had flashes of brilliance last year at Missouri. Now, Missouri in a very tough Southeastern Conference. So this kid is battle-tested, right? He's played in the SEC East. He's played in the SEC. So going into the Big Ten East, I don't think will be too daunting. Going to go against Ohio State, the Penn States, the Michigan States, the Michigans of the world. Now, I'm not saying he's going to go in there and they're going to beat them all, because they're not. But I think what is going to happen, he's not going to be rattled by the moment. When you look at the quarterbacks last year, after Michael Penix went down, you look at Donovan McCulley, a good 4-star kid, appears to be talented, but there were times where it seemed like, okay, this kid might be a little bit rattled by the moment. Jack Tuttle, none of those guys really stood out, so they needed to go out, and Tom Allen really needed to go make a move after a 2-10 season. Jaquez Smith, this is a big part of why I think Connor Bazelak is going to be successful. Jaquez Smith may be the best recruit in Indiana history. He was a 4-star class from the class of 21, redshirted last year, and he's going to be expected to come onto the scene in a big way. You watch him on film, he pops out as a game-breaking wide receiver that, Ty Freifogel was kind of that when Michael Penix was here, so maybe Jaquez Smith can kind of step in where Ty Freifogel left off. I think he's going to be a big part. Miles Marshall, their top returning wide receiver, I think is going to be going to step up a little bit. And Sean Shivers, a 4-star transfer from Auburn at running back, kind of got lost in the shuffle kind of a deal. But I think he's going to be able to come in there at Indiana. All these guys, I think, are going to work together really well. Look, I'm not saying they're going to go out and they're going to recreate 2020, because I don't think they are. But I think this isn't going to be a pushover when you play Indiana. I think pieces are coming together. There's a couple of other transfer wide receivers that they're going to bring into their system. So I think he's going to have some weapons. I'm not saying that they're going to be the best weapons. I don't even think they're going to be in the top half of the conference. But I think there could be some games out there where they could give teams trouble. Connor Bazelak, I think, is the top transfer quarterback coming into the conference this season. And watch out for Indiana. You get him back to bowl eligibility, could be enough to save Tom Allen at IU. The last one I'm going to cover here today is, I think, the guy who could make one of the biggest impacts in the Big Ten. Jacob Copeland. Dramatic pause. Jacob Copeland, transferring from Florida to Maryland. He was Florida's leading receiver last year. 642 yards and 4 touchdowns for the Gators last season in the SEC. Now, Jacob Copeland, I think he was like top 60, top 70 type of player when he came out of high school. This is a big-time guy that can make big-time plays, and he's played in the SEC, and he's succeeded in the SEC, so he's going to be able to come to the Big Ten and do just fine. Dante Demas comes back from injury. Raheem Jarrett was their leading wide receiver last year, 829 yards and 5 touchdowns. And don't forget, freshman running back 4-star Ramon Brown, who could come in and make a big-time contribution. Oh, yeah, and Taulia Tagovailoa, maybe the most underrated quarterback in all of college football. Last year, 26 touchdowns, a bunch of passing yards. Look, I said it last year, it seemed like Maryland was just trying to break through. The Dante Demas injury in the game against Iowa was a heartbreaker for them. We'll see what happens on defense with them. When I look at them, I think they have a better receiving core. Right now, I think they have a better receiving core than Purdue. Do they have a better quarterback than Purdue? How does Taulia Tagovailoa and Aiden O'Connell match up? That's the big question right now. You put Maryland in the West, and I think they could contend for it. But because they're in the East Division, I think it's going to be difficult for them. But I think they're better than Indiana, and I think they're better than Rutgers. Okay? Can Maryland knock off a team like a Penn State or a Michigan State? Can they beat a Michigan? Can they pull off a miracle against an Ohio State? That's going to be the question. Do they have enough on defense to make that happen? I think they got enough playmakers on offense, and having Jacob Copeland in there, just another playmaker for Mike Locksley, is going to be the guy. Big-time honorable mentions out to the defensive back position. Tanner McAllister transferring from Oklahoma State to Ohio State. He was a starter for a lot of years. Spent 4 years at Oklahoma State and now grad transferring here over to Ohio State. And there's I think Tommy Brown transferring from Arizona State over to Nebraska. Jay Shaw from UCLA to Wisconsin. All of these really good defensive backs. Those guys are going to make an impact on defense. Who do you think are some transfers that maybe I forgot that are going to make an impact to the Big Ten Conference this year? Leave that in the comments below. Subscribe to Big Ten Ted. We got more content coming. We'll see you in the next one.